We're live.
All righty. Welcome back, everybody. It's House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. And we are taking some more testimony on H718, an act relating to building energy efficiency. And we are going to hear first from Andrew Brewer, the Manager of Government and Public Affairs at Downs Rockland Martin. And then we are, I think, waiting to wrestle up our other witness from the League of Cities and Towns. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from Manchester.
Scott Cabell, Big Dog Party.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael South, Caledonia 2. Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleffner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
All righty. And in the room.
Dana Lee Perry for Nebraska Group.
Jeremy Little, Vermont Chamber of Commerce.
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Council.
All right. For the record.
All right, Andrew Brewer with Downs, Rockland and Martin. Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Today, I'm going to speak mostly, I think you all know that I represent the Home Builders Association, Vermont Builders and Remodelers Association, and the Architects Association. You heard from Tom Bursey, I guess 2 weeks ago now, from the architects. So today, mostly my comments are going to be coming from on behalf of the Home Builders Association. There's often a lot of symmetry between the home builders and the architects and the way to see these issues. So before I turn to specifically to 718, I wanted to zoom out for a minute and try to look at the universe of how builders are feeling about the efforts here. From a builder's perspective, energy codes, enforcement, liability, professional regulation, innovation in construction, they don't operate in silos. They function as one system from their point of view when they're working on a project. But they feel that here in Montpelier, some of these issues are being shaped in different committees. In this committee, we're refining RBs, we're increasing technical standards or updating compliance pathways, strengthening documentation requirements for energy codes. In House Judiciary right now, there's ongoing discussions about construction liability. Builders and architects are asking for a thing what's known as a statute of repose, which creates an outside time limit on claims after a project is complete. In Senate Judiciary, they're working on a bill around intentional fraud and bad faith committed by construction folks. In housing in general, there's thoughtful work underway regarding off-site and modular construction. Lots of conversations happening, but all affecting the same group of people. Each of these conversations makes sense on its own, but on the ground, they accumulate and they stack up on top of each other and they start pulling at threads. Over the past several years, past several code cycles, RBs have become more detailed and more technically complex. Builders are not opposed to that direction generally. Many are already building at or above some of those codes. So the issue is not the standards themselves, it's the institutional framework around them. Today, Vermont does not have a unified residential building code. We do not have a clear binding statewide interpretation and appeals process for codes. We don't have a consistent statewide enforcement structure for codes. So we have an increasingly technical energy code that carries real legal and financial consequences, but without the administrative architecture that typically supports the system of that complexity. From the builder standpoint, the direction of travel can feel very asymmetrical. Standards increase, documentation increases, potential exposure increases, structural clarity does not. They're not asking any committee, this committee in particular, to lower standards. They're asking for symmetry. If the state is going to attach legal consequences to compliance with a very technical code, that code should operate within a coherent regulatory structure, clear authority, consistent interpretation, training, inspection, reasonable liability boundaries. That's the whole 9 yards, everything that goes with a residential code. The long-term structural answer is not complicated. Chair James, I was going to say, if you just wanted to take up H717 which is the bill right before this, just pass that this afternoon. That'd be great. That's the bill that Representative Campbell introduced that we're referring to as the aspirational bill. It's the roadmap bill for where ultimately builders and architects would like to go. But we know that politically and institutionally, our agencies, we're not there yet. We're not ready for that. So H718 recognizes that reality. It does not attempt to leap directly to full residential code adoption. Instead, it makes a more measured step, studying adoption, strengthening the contractor registry, clarifying municipal enforcement authority, and stabilizing the current transition. It's not the full system that we hope to get to, but it's moving in the right direction. So with that framing, I do have some thoughts on 718 and the latest draft. I'll just touch on some of the sections that we have real interest in. I like the addition of some of the changes in the finding section that helps clarify and frame, more structural, less aspirational. Section 2 is the section on residential building code that initially required a date certain when DFS would switch to code. Now we've asked Mike DeRocha to come back in a year with recommendations on whether and how to adopt a residential building code. It's a step, and I've spoken with Mike at length about it. I think he owned the fact that he didn't finish this project when he started it probably over a year ago. But I absolutely take him at his word. I know Mike's will do what he says he's going to do, and I think in a year he'll be back with good recommendations on whether we should adopt a residential building code in the state. So we wholeheartedly support that change. The task force, the residential contractor registry task force. The draft correctly acknowledges that the existing registry has not functioned as intended. And so, expanding the task force's mandate to evaluate certification, licensure, and possible regulatory alignment with DFS is very constructive. So we support the task force. One thing that I will jump ahead to on the task, I think the task force is going to make recommendations about whether or not OPR should conduct the sunrise on HERS raters.
Well, let's see. I think that sunrise is in a separate section,
It's a separate section,
but I don't think it's.
not part of the task force
Not part of it,
specifically? Okay, all right. Well, since I mentioned it, I'm there. I'm going to skip right to that part anyway. So yeah, I think that's section 9. I guess the way I'd put it is I think the builders are kind of agnostic about that point. I spoke with one of our builders who's a HERS rater. I would say he's probably 15% of the HERS raters in Vermont. Literally, I think there's 7 or 8 HERS raters in the state. And so it was Jim Bradley, who I spoke to. He's with Hayward Design Build. And he was, I asked him, what do you think of the section? And he was kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. He says, I guess my question is, who would OPR be recommending to license? There's literally 7 or 8 of these folks in the state doing it. And the ones who are, getting, any real work tend to be the multi-unit larger projects. And Jim even questioned whether or not he was going to maintain his first license. There's so little business there. So, I don't think we're going to oppose that language. But if we do move forward with it, I guess the request is that we make sure, we ensure the scope is proportionate to the size of the market and the actual policy needed. And I suppose that's what the Sunrise report does, is answer those kinds of questions.
Yes, and I would point out that HERS raters are regulated somehow. They're certified at the Department of Public Service right now. So, and I wonder if that should be mentioned in the bill. Would that make sense to mention that? I'm looking at the Ellen Dutch Council. Maybe.
May or may not be.
Anyway, a question.
A quick point about licensing. you know, when you build a home, the architect who designs it is licensed. Um, electrician is licensed. The plumber is licensed. If you buy or sell a home and you do your due diligence and you hire a home inspection person, that person's licensed. We're talking about licensing PERS rating potentially. Do you know who's not licensed? It's the guy who built your home. I always find that irony pretty stark. And maybe that's the way we get at it. We just license everybody and there's only one person left, which is the builder.
Well, and to be clear, that sunrise process did not necessarily
Result in license, correct, yeah.
Is to decide whether that industry should be regulated in some way. It could be a registration, it could be some certification that is not exclusive, and it could be a licensure that does include an exclusive certification.
Right. I think the one section of the bill that is causing some concern for builders is the section that I hopefully will hear about from the league about municipal enforcement and municipal authority. I suspect what you'll hear from the league is that they believe that ability already exists for them to have municipal authority. The concern with builders is a patchwork of towns across the state with different codes. Here, and then correct me, Scott, if I get this wrong, but I think your options now, since the executive order, are you can choose 2020 RVs, you could build the 2024 RVs. Each of those also has a stretch code. So I think there are 4 options that a town could choose from. Think I have that right?
I think that I don't know about choosing a stretch code. That's a good question.
Okay.
But yes, presumably a town
Okay.
could choose whether it's 2020 or 2024. The way it is now.
Yeah.
Well, and it's actually not even legally that way. Whoop, we have a correction here from the.
I'm happy to wait until after, but I disagree
Okay.
that a town could choose 2020.
Well,
very clear.
we'll talk about that. Yes.
Right, I was about to say.
Pending, rule adoption. Yeah.
Pending rule adoption. Right now,
Yeah.
legally, statute says 2024.
Correct. Thank you. And so that's the concern is just, as you've heard several times over the past this year and last year from architects and builders is their general concern even about the statewide RVs code that we have and difficulty of compliance with builders, the lack of a foundation. And so introducing more complexity and more options into the system under that same cycle of not really having any underlying foundation is daunting for builders. That's their main concern with that. Yes.
Well, and the reply to that is that they would not be allowed to change the codes. They would be allowed to adopt an adopted code. So the language in the bill is may incorporate by reference. So they have no jurisdiction over adjustments or wording changes or anything like that in RVs or CVs. It's just adopting them, right? And then enforcing it. And this is as you know, I think, sort of in parallel, or partly to facilitate a parallel non-governmental effort to create a uniform set of processes for towns that do wish to adopt or enforce energy codes. That's going on through the Energy Action Network.
Yes, and you're right. And town by town, the text of the codes would be the same.
Right.
But the administration would not.
Well, that's
And
the effort that's underway.
and so I think that the interpretation creep is what builders feel here, is how different towns are. And without, again, that underlying agency or underlying structure, creeping interpretation is a big deal. That's what they fear. So that's our concern with that section. Okay.
Slightly tangential, but so we do have codes for 3 units and above.
Mhm.
And so how do people feel that like those codes work or the system around it? Is that people happy with
I
that?
think so. Yeah, I think fire and safety does a great job. Fire and safety.
Right,
They're really checking for fire and safety codes.
right.
But
the builders, they feel like there's a
That just
structure
don't-
that they understand and it's
Yes.
reliable and.
And when it's 3 units and above, you're talking about, the single family owner occupied home builders that, I think there are probably builders out there who have no experience with fire and safety. Because they're building one-off homes.
Right.
So 3 and above, really, you're probably mostly talking about multi-unit builders. Yes, I think they would say fire and safety does a great job.
And remind me, there are building codes for those units, correct? Or you might know.
Well,
It's-
there's fire and safety has adopted what they call a fire and building safety code, which does apply to 3 units and up. But it is based on a commercial code. And actually the cutoff between residential and quote unquote and commercial vary depending on who you're talking to and what program or agency you're talking about. When I was and working at Trinity Thermal, it seemed to me that 4 units and up was some sort of a threshold. So
Okay,
And I don't know-
I don't want to complicate.
I don't know.
Right,
Commercial
but
building code.
but I think to answer your question, they're not looking at construction code.
well, the fire and building safety code, it does incorporate the IBC, the
Right.
International Building Code.
Yeah.
So which is a building code. So there is a building code. Yes.
Same with mine, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether people were happy with that system so that we could,
Yeah.
kind of piggyback on that.
Well,
So-
that's been what we've been asking. I mean, that's, and I think Mike DeRocher has been candid. He says, we're not ready to be the agency of jurisdiction over RVs or a full-blown construction code. He said they don't have the resources, and we acknowledge that. We believe that to be true.
Yeah.
But but we've been saying, yeah, but they could become that. And that's
Right.
what we hope to move towards somewhere down the road. Yeah.
Right. But it's a long process.
Yes.
And yeah.
Safe harbor language. So, you heard some good testimony yesterday. I think Ellen did a great job framing it. The governor issues his executive order in September. And there definitely were builders who, in good faith, said, all right, the governor said I can now file the 2020 RVs and I'm good. And so some did. Then I believe in November, the Attorney General issued her opinion on the executive order. The opinion wasn't structural. It didn't get into the ins and outs of energy code. It said, the governor, what you did procedurally was wrong. You can't make changes like that. So now, as Alan put, there's this legal ambiguity gray area, and builders are like, wait a minute, am I going to get in trouble for filing that 2020 RV certificate? So the idea was this kind of safe harbor saying anybody who filed 2020 RVs because the governor said go ahead is going to be held harmless until such time as either we're now going through the rules process, which is supposedly the fix for the governor's executive order. Those either get adopted, or if they don't get adopted, we could pick a point in time and say, pick July 1, pick a point and say, after July 1, even though we haven't resolved this issue with the executive order, everybody knows the playing field now. You builders, you have no more excuse. We weren't trying to offer this as a sneaky way to codify use of 2020 RVs forever in light of this gray area that we're in. So I don't know if that helps explain the safe harbor idea.
So you're saying that the builder would support inserting a date.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Because right now
Yeah.
there is no date.
Until the rule, there's no date, and we don't know when that's going to be, when the rules may or may not get adopted.
Is it okay to ask a question about the difference between 2020 and 2024?
Um, well, sure, it gets into gory detail, but
In terms of the air,
In terms of what?
air handling,
air,
is that, can anybody tell me the difference?
well, 2024 requires mechanical ventilation, air,
2024 requires
balanced mechanical ventilation.
because the home is tight.
Well, that's the implications,
And 2020 does.
Correct.
right?
So that's
So-
really, really basic.
Sure. So balanced ventilation is so just so we know what that means. You're right. It means the house is tight.
Right.
It means that the 2020 RVs relied on exhaust air moving out, which meant there was enough passive air coming in that it could also go out. 2024 is saying, all right, the houses are tight enough now that you need a mechanical system that brings in fresh air and moves out the old air at the same time. So, you know, what you're going for is this kind of neutral pressure inside of the house, so that cold air isn't getting sucked in through all the cracks of your house. And our concern there is that there's a real cost to that.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna
it
say,
isn't just that. It isn't builders saying, oh, it's going to cost more. It does cost a lot more.
Mhm.
And I know that in the early days of these rules being designed, you know, there was testimony that, but you're going to save tons of money over the lifetime. You know, the builders, Jason Webster, who you've had in committee before, he owns Huntington Homes.
Mhm.
He actually commissioned a Hearth Rater to do an analysis on two homes he built, one in 2020 and 20 RVs, one in 2024.
Mhm.
I think the payback was $143 a year. And it was going to cost an additional $12,000 for the house. So yeah, over
What about
40 or 50 years, you might get a payback.
but what about air
yeah.
quality?
Well, good question. Yeah, but presumably better. Presumably better. There's trade-offs.
And it's worth pointing out that part of the process of updating the energy codes is doing a cost effectiveness analysis. And when that was done for the 2024 codes, the measures that were included that were changes from 2020 were determined to be cost effective. So it's and as far as ventilation is always an energy penalty because you're bringing in unconditioned air and displacing conditioned air in some fashion. But people have to have fresh air to breathe. So,
In your heat recovery ventilation.
and heat recovery ventilators
Are expensive.
greatly moderate the energy penalty, but in terms of the thermal energy penalty, but then there's an electrical energy penalty because it costs electricity to run the thing. And then running the ductwork around the house, you know, there's a cost. Without question, but that is,
Then there's those of us that heat with wood,
yeah, and
it affects the wood stove.
well, actually, a valve ventilation would be better for any
Right.
combustion appliance because you would not be depressurizing the details when to get it this way.
Yeah,
You would not be depressurizing the air in the house with the, you know, the volume of air in the house as you are when you're relying on exhaust only ventilation.
And I think for the average consumer who can afford to build a new house, if that's important to them, they'll ask it of their builder and they'll get it.
That's right. That's right. You know, the intent of the executive order, which we supported,
Right.
you know, we had been communicating with the DPS and others in the administration for a long time about two things. What we saw is real technical problems on the ground, you know, implementing the new 2024 articles. That was number one. And number two, though, and the rollout was rough. There are 3 paths to which you can comply with the new 2024 RVs, and one of them didn't work for a year. That's where you can go online and enter. It simply didn't work for a year. There were problems with the prescriptive path. That's the path where if you build exactly this way, you'll pass. There were problems with that, but the rollout was rough. There were incomplete code manuals online for a long time. And we looked at the executive order as the administration saying, all right. We just need a breather here, time out until we can get things straight. In the meantime, we thought they were going to rescind the 2024 RVs. And in fact, I think that what they came up with is a little more elegant, saying, no, you could still aspire and build to the 2024 RVs, but you can also stick with the 2020. So,
Thanks for that.
yeah.
Try to fit it all.
Yeah, I mean, those are my, if we can, if we're successful at using some RGGI money to help fix the website, that'd be great. That would be a big deal, I think, for all builders. If we could get some more functionality and have the contractor registry live up to its potential, that would be terrific. And I will just end with, I hope you vote for this bill. It's not, of course, we would love to be taking up the whole ball of wax where we knew that in a couple of years, we are going to have residential building code in the state. And that's the answer to all our problems that we see. But we recognize that that's not going to happen soon. I would say this, that the builders support the bill generally. I've said a couple of concerns that we have. There isn't anything in the bill that builders are going to scream and yell about, say, no, this kills us. This is going to harm us badly. They support the direction we're going. And so thank you, Representative Scott. Campbell, excuse me, for all your work. Sorry, for all your work on this. I think some of he's been kind of a one-man show for the past year anyways. I know he had a co-chair.
I don't know if Senator Blanco.
Is he been aware of 718 exists?
I don't know if he was a co-chair or not. It's the same.
But anyway, thank you for your work on this. I'm happy to take more questions if you want.
Rep. Sibilia?
Just double checking, you're supporting 1.2?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Did the league surface?
No.
Okay.
Did they answer their phone?
Nope.
Are they on there? They were invited, but not.
And confirmed.
I saw Josh
Okay,
Hanford
fine,
earlier.
too.
I'm going to go find Josh to see if because he said something. Really
Okay.
Don't undo everything I just said, Ellen.
All right. Well, while we see if the league is about, we wanted to set aside some time to look through the bill. I mean, we did a walkthrough yesterday and get a sense of where the committee is on this one. So let me get out my.
So I think there was only one change, maybe a couple of changes. Only one that I have in my head right now. And that was to strike the appropriation, the general fund appropriation.
Yeah.
Is that the only change there is?
Yes, that's the only change
Yeah.
I have.
From yesterday.
Yeah.
All right, so we are looking at Bill 718 draft 1.2. Okay. So alrighty, so why don't we do our go round. Scott, do you want to kick it off?
That's a quick bill.
Okay. Let's
Yeah.
see. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that this is a topic that has undergone enormous vetting with all kinds of stakeholders over the past several years. And it's certainly not what everybody would want. It's probably not what anybody would want, but it is a compromise that is intended to set the stage for some potential future further more formal regulation about energy codes and building codes. And I think many of the changes that were made from the original, as introduced version of the bill, were intended to satisfy objections from various administration agencies and And I think people should mostly be good with it. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, Rep. Sabili?
I apologize. Is OPR in favor of this version?
OPR, I sent a copy of this version around to everybody who was on the Building Energy Code Working Group, which included OPR, and then I sent a copy directly to Director Jennifer Coleman, and I have not heard a response.
I would be. I would like to hear thoughts. I mean, I think if there's a lot of stakeholders. So if we've resolved the issues for PR and others, I would too.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Very much in support.
No,
okay,
and it's, I think we really need to start with the basic building code, build on that.
Well, that is part of the bill.
Well, it is, but it's not till 2028, and there's.
Well, next year, we will get a recommendation from Division of Fire Safety about, as a result of a process that they've already started, they're working through with their stakeholders about whether and how to adopt a residential building construction code. And that was a compromise with the the original bill had a date certain when Ron had to adopt it, a residential building code. So that part of the bill, Division of Fire Safety is in support of it.
I just don't think things are in place yet to pass this.
okay. Rep. Southworth?
We know housing's in a shortage. I believe adding any more regulation to builders and building period is going to slow that down. And I am not in the mindset to spend $400,000 on bridging money on this. So I am voting no.
And you would be a no, if it were general fund money? I know that's
I am a
just
no.
different, okay. All right, yep,
The Reggie money is a challenge for me. General fund money. Okay.
Would the Reggie fund money be coming from an existing?
Yeah, there's about
Program.
$8 million accumulated in Reggie revenues that was not budgeted for in the last over the last 3 years. So the $400,000 was I guess one of my part is about 5% of the money that's there.
It's in a fund that's not being utilized currently.
That's right, and it's been Efficiency Vermont and Public Service Department don't support using that money for this. But of course it is the legislature's purview to appropriate money. And what the money would be used for otherwise would be just weatherization work, which is important to do. No question about it.
I'm not sure, but statutorily we can use that bridging money for this.
Well, there's a thing called notwithstanding, which lets you do that.
this language is written to allow it.
Yes.
Okay, sorry,
Oh, just on the Reggie, I have, this would be the first time the legislature has,
Is that money?
yeah, so it's a it would be. Yeah,
Well, my thought was that there is a clear nexus to encouraging builders that don't need to be retrofit later with weather stations.
Okay,
I do share Representative Southworth's concerns about anything acting building of new housing, but I absolutely agree with the premise of the bill. I wish Vermont had proper building codes. And hearing that the builders are in favor of it, and tilted me, made me feel better about it. So I would vote in favor.
I should also note that there's nothing in here that actually increases regulation on buildings. This is all about actually trying to use market mechanisms to encourage builders to get better trained and take advantage of the many training opportunities that exist now that are not being taken advantage of fully by leveraging the residential contractor registry and its voluntary certifications as a mechanism, as a market mechanism to encourage builders to distinguish themselves from their competitors by getting trained and certified. The energy codes are required now. So this does nothing to increase regulation.
For enforcement.
Or enforcement.
And that's the problem here is that you still got.
It is a problem.
The idea is to educate the builders from square one, the first time a person that starts to be interested in being a framer or any of the portions. I remember when you had to have an electrode in the foundation. And contractors came and said, what does this mean? The foundation contractor wanting the interpretation from, and I don't remember what year that was, but it really is the basis of educating the contractor and the contractor educating his workforce to proper means of it.
Right.
So,
Well, I think that what gets people into education and training is the requirement that they do that. One reason, probably the main reason why there's a much higher compliance rate with the commercial building codes is that typically commercial projects involve licensed professionals, architects, engineers, and their license is on the line. They are found to have not followed code. So one shortcut to fixing the problem of how do we get people to better train would be the licensed contractors. But that's another more difficult step. So this doesn't do that. It's just it's taking the voluntary compliance route. How do we encourage contractors to comply voluntarily with what they're actually required to do?
And so it does have the safe harbor fines language, which will protect builders.
Yes.
Who are using the executive order.
Yes.
Right. So that would actually facilitate building, or at least make builders
Aware.
more comfortable with.
Yeah. Well, and this language was proposed by Public Service Authority. Right.
okay. So, yeah, a couple things. I support the bill. I mean, I've definitely been around long enough to see how hard we've worked to try to make very incremental progress with this. So I would vote yes. I hear the concerns about using the RGGI money. that could, I mean, this bill will have to go to approps, I assume, because it has money in it. And so the job in approps would be, to consider that funding source, can stack that up against general fund, requests and, take testimony on the money part. So I would be comfortable, voting this out and sending it to approps, since they have the big picture on the money. I do think that, general and housing wants to take a quick flyby and just take a look at it, which I think is appropriate. So I think what we need to do is hear back from OPR. That seems like an important next step.
And the LCT, if we can get it.
And the league. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So we are, and I'm just trying to write down where we are with everything. So H718. We need a response from OPR. I think written testimony would be great. Some kind of a response. We need to hear from the league.
And I'm gonna make one small change
Okay,
about the appropriation.
okay, great. And then Ellen has to maybe hold off until we hear back.
Okay.
In case they have feedback to incorporate.
Oh, okay, good.
So we are TBD. So that is the next step there. We need to hear from OPR and the league. And then Ellen has a small revision that you'll wait until we hear what we hear from OPR. So that's what we're doing on that. And then just to circle back on some of our earlier conversations today, H716 net metering. Rep Morrow is working on a draft that would knock out the adjuster freeze, keep in the behind the meter language. And I'm a little worried now that I reflect on the new language about batteries. Put it in there, and I guess we'll see if that sparks 18 more hours of testimony. But assuming, just waiting to see what's up with the battery part. We have reached out to DPS, PUC, Green Mountain Power, VIPSA, WEC, and VEC, and scheduled a 2-hour block next Wednesday to get everybody to come back in and give their thoughts on just behind the meter part. Because I feel like I heard pretty clearly that we needed to, folks were interested in that, maybe considering it, but we need more testimony on that. Okay, and then we did not land the plane on 753. The question for the committee was, are we going to require the PUC to update the rule within some, longer time frame to address X, Y, Z? Or are we just going to write a letter? So I need to hear from folks on that.
I'm wondering if we could fit them in one more time. I don't know if there's another thing we had to ask the PUC though.
We can.
Because there are a couple questions that we could pose to them that would help with next steps. So like later this week or next week.
Yes. And do you want to get their thoughts on, I know what they'll say, but I think we should have them in.
I do, yeah, I want to get their thoughts more on the IRP idea as well as any reporting gaps or just clarification about that exists now.
Okay, we're gonna need to let them know what they're being. How about
I put it all together? In
that would be great. Like, what do we want to hear from the PUC on? Yeah. And that'll be the next step there. Okay, and then next step on data centers is happening at 2:15. So why don't we go off live